My name is Heman Chong, and I'm an artist, curator, and a writer. The new project I'm working on, it's called Calendars 2020 to 2096. It essentially is a series that I've worked on for the last 7 years. It contains primarily a juxtaposition of images photographed in Singapore of common spaces that we all at one point or another have access to, like void decks, car parks, shopping malls, and this is juxtaposed in a very literal way as images on a printed page of a calendar. So there's this element of space, this is, coupled with this element of time. And initially when I started the series, it wasn't really, there wasn't really a master plan to create a set of a project such as this, but somewhere along the line it became very apparent and very interesting for me to be able to produce a situation which has both the capacity to speculate about the future and at the same time have this element of conservation, of preserving memories. My position as an artist was never meant to be to generate a consensual understanding of things. I'm not interested in trying to make people think in the same way. It should just open up to a multitude of interpretations. And also, when we're talking about the future, it's also very important to understand that we are essentially speculating. It is only through speculation that you could somehow develop certain thought experiments. I think to begin with, Singapore for me does not have its own language. I think a lot of the landscape, a lot of the built environment represents a kind of palimpsest of different values, different politics, different styles from different times. So we have on one hand a very sort of constructivist, brutal, socialist aspect of it, which is found in the HDB flats that we live in. Then we have, of course, the kind of neoliberal, pseudo-postmodernist monstrosities like Ion, for example. So I think, in a way, perhaps the language of Singapore, of the city, is change. I think something that's very evident, especially within cities today, and this is not exclusive to Singapore, is that there is a very clear emergence not of a language, but of languages. What is very close to me when I'm building the project is to try to show as wide a spectrum as possible of spaces, thereby having a possibility to reveal as many languages as possible within the city. I think this is very important for us as a community to understand that there are all these different stratas that are, are within this sort of ecosystem of the city, and how these different stratas are essentially insoluble to each other to a large extent. They don't mix, or they don't want to mix. So within the entire process of me working on this project, I very slowly started to understand the quality of the spaces that we inhabit. A lot of the spaces that we see on a daily basis are extremely pared down, actually. Like, yeah, perhaps it's a kind of situation also in Singapore where we don't really have, or it's very rare that we exaggerate spaces. A lot of what we understand of as emotion, or what do you call that? Like investment of oneself, one's identity within spaces, become very gradual. For example, like this, this whole talk now of trying to preserve provision shops in Singapore, which I find very interesting, because the same people who are talking about the preservation of such spaces are also the same people who are generating new spaces in which displaces these spaces. So it's a kind of very sort of tenuous relationship that we are talking about when we negotiate the city in this way. We live in a very opinionated world, and much as I like to encourage the prevalence of free speech and everything, I think people really need to think about what they're saying. And I think this can be really done through a kind of meditation on the things they see. I suppose it's very possible to say, without much irony today, that we exist in images. Simply because so much of ourselves is represented via either our images that we have taken of ourselves, or images that our friends have taken of us. It's very difficult to avoid this kind of virtualization of our identity, simply because more and more we are being invited into this sphere which we understand of as social networking. A good question to ask is if we could imagine meaning out of memories in the future.